Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. I just want to thank everybody that got a chance to join me last Thursday with our webinar where we talked about the weather of this growing season and the upcoming winter forecast. But I'll never forget the very end of it because Skipper and Margaret were both relaying questions to me from the audience, and one of the questions was, do I see anything coming out of the tropics in the near term that could be problematic? And I remember my answer to that question. This was just last Thursday. I said, there's something right now that's trying to get going in the Caribbean, but such low guidance on it, I don't think it's going to be that big of a system, at least in the near term. Well, over the weekend, we then saw the formation of Tropical Storm Zeta, which is the circulation that you can see right here. Now, what's so important about this particular animation, which is showing you mid-level wind field today, mid-level in the atmosphere, is this large ridge that's going over the western United States that then digs into this trough that's cutting into the southwest, and there is bitterly cold air in this trough. Now, what's important about this is this trough, where I'm putting the X, is about to get cut off from the main flow. And if you see what I'm talking about here by looking at tomorrow's winds, you'll understand the importance of this. You see the jet stream then bridges right over the top of this on Tuesday, leaving this circulation just sitting and spinning here. Now, by definition, cutoff lows move slowly because they are cut off from the main flow. And what's going to happen here is that this cutoff low is going to slowly move over Texas throughout this week, all while what could be Hurricane Zeta then moves into the Gulf of Mexico. And the two systems will be timed together to move right here through the lower Mississippi River Valley, over toward the Appalachian Mountains, over toward the Ohio River Valley. And the question becomes, what kind of precipitation do we end up getting out of this over in the Carolinas? So again, this just shows you how unpredictable tropical systems are any time of the year. And this shows us the challenges in trying to see what they're going to do more than just a few days in advance. So we got a very active week on our hands here in terms of this upper level flow pattern. We better get into the details here to try to understand what to expect. So overnight hours last night, you're looking here at a satellite animation showing infrared temperatures. And right down here, this is Zeta. And I'll be honest with you, it looks quite good. And it's heading its way toward the Yucatan Peninsula before going into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, thinking about its eventual path, I would like to just show you something kind of interesting about the way this hurricane season is shaped up. By the way, now that we have Tropical Storm Zeta, soon to be Hurricane Zeta, on the books here, this now makes it tied with 2005 as having the most named systems in a tropical season, and you're about to hear me say we're not even close to being done with this yet. So the map you've been looking at here, though, is August 1st through October 1st total precipitation ranks. So again, you can find your climate district and look at the number, and you can see how wet things have been across parts of the Mid-Atlantic through the Carolinas. Well, let me show you this. Isaias was the first system we dealt with during this time period, again, August and September. Kyle formed just off the coast and kind of skirted in that direction. And then we had Laura that came in and hit Louisiana before cutting into the Ohio River Valley. That was then followed by Sally, which wrapped around and hit the Carolinas. And then Beta, which took its leftover precipitation toward the Carolinas. And then Delta, which did the same. So this is how active of a time period we've had here in the 2 months leading up to October. And you can just see that the collection of these systems has largely been in through this quadrant. What we've not had is the systems that come in straight off the Atlantic and slam into North Carolina, which we hope we don't see that for the rest of this year. But the reason why I illustrate that point is that the same upper level flow pattern that's given us this is what's going to take what will be Hurricane Zeta into the same direction. So we can look over here at the 5 a.m. update over here on the right from the National Hurricane Center, and you can see the path. And it's expected to, over the next 5 days, move into this direction. The European model gives similar guidance here, taking the heaviest rains toward the Appalachian Mountains. My big question is how much of this rain actually makes it east? How much do we get into this section of the Carolinas? And we got to take a look at that. Because over the last 72 hours, so basically our weekend, we did have some locally heavy rains in parts of North and South Carolina. Other places completely missed by this precipitation. Meanwhile, just so you know, on the backside here, all of this was super heavy snow. I'll show you that in a few moments. But here's what we got to get to. I want to play for you the European model. We're going to zoom in on the southeast. We're going to watch this Tropical Storm Zeta, Hurricane Zeta, move into New Orleans right here by the time we get into Wednesday, Thursday. You see the model, as we just let it play out, I let it go all the way out to 10 days. Can you almost see that from Georgia through South Carolina, through North Carolina, that there is going to be a pocket in here where if Zeta stays to our west and north, we could get away through the next 10 days relatively dry. In fact, let's not go out 10 days. Let's just watch Zeta come in. Ready? So this is now Wednesday morning, getting into Thursday morning. That's when Zeta makes its landfall. We can see that through much of this time period, we're relatively dry. Throughout much of the beginning of this week, in fact, all the way to Thursday. As we then work our way into the end of this week, now Thursday through Friday, that's where what's left of Zeta is forecast to go through the Appalachian Mountains up here to like Virginia. And we get all the way through Friday morning with a big section here of both the Carolinas over on the drier side of things. And then as we work our way through Friday into the weekend, it may not be until Monday that a front comes through, increasing chances of precipitation here. So I look at that and I want to do a little bit of model comparison. So you just saw this. This is just through the next 5 days. So that takes us all the way through Friday night. This is what the GFS over here on the left suggests. Now the GFS has a little bit farther to the south and east track. So look at the differences here with where the edge of the heaviest rain is going to be in the GFS versus the European. And I'm going to be honest with you, I tend to side with the European. It tends to do a better job with this, but we're going to have to just sit here and watch this all week long and see where the track eventually makes landfall. The farther to the west in Louisiana, I think the better the chances this has of getting pulled farther to the north by the cutoff low. And therefore, I'm going to favor the European, but we'll know next Monday if I was right or wrong in favoring that model. Let's watch it all happen, though, in the European model. So here is Zeta, which we're concerned about, and let's play this forward. Now, what we see is that through the beginning of this week, we just have higher atmospheric pressure sitting over the top of us, so low chances of precipitation through Monday and Tuesday. As we then get ourselves out into Wednesday afternoon and evening, now working into Thursday morning, this is where we could start to see some rain here over in the Appalachian Mountains, all right? Zeta is now possibly going to be sitting over the border between Alabama and Mississippi. Now moving this forward, this is Thursday afternoon and evening, now getting into Friday morning. Did you see that? The cutoff low combined with Zeta tends to want to push precipitation up here into this part of the mid-Atlantic, not bringing so much down farther to the south, just scattered precipitation, scattered storms to the south of this. Now, as we pull on through Friday, getting into the weekend, this is now Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon and evening. Now working our way into Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon and evening. And that's when that front possibly comes through. Sunday evening getting into Monday morning, which is going to give us another chance at some precipitation. But we'll be talking about that in next week's video. Now, when I see that whole pattern setting up, again, I'm concerned about a couple of things. Heavy rainfall, and then with cold fronts coming through, we do want to be talking about those temperatures. But before I get to any of that, I'd like to address a bigger picture thing with tropical cyclones before we go any farther. Now, we watched the MJO sit right over here in phase 4 and 5 for about 50 days. It then jumped out and is now currently sitting right here in phase 6 and going towards 7, 8, and 1. Now, what does all that mean? Okay, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And where's 1? It's over here off the image. 2, 3. See it? So that means we're going to take the best upper level support back to Africa, which also means that this area is going to have good upper level support for tropical thunderstorm development. So what I'm saying is that as we get into the month of October, I still have to continue to watch the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Western Atlantic for potential tropical cyclone development. Because as the MJO comes curling around phase 1 and 2, that's going to keep that area over the next 15 to 20 days active, okay? We'll talk about what this means for South America in just a few minutes. Now from there, I want to show you what the MJO has done, because it has our La Nina right now down here at negative 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is a moderate strength La Nina. Well, that MJO is going to disrupt those trade winds over the next 15 days or so. And it's going to give La Nina just a brief reprieve from continuing to develop. But at the end of this video, I'm going to review what I'm expecting for the longer term forecast, and it's going to include La Nina. So I just wanted to give you some perspective on this brief disruption in La Nina strengthening here by the MJO doing a bit of a reset. Now, if we think about what this is going to do overall to our pattern, check this out, okay? This is our last month. We've had a big ridge out west, and the flows come around it just like that and then did this. Now, that particular flow pattern then went over a ridge here in the open North Atlantic and then dipped into a tight trough over Europe. But this is the feature I want you to see. That ridge right there. It's just sitting over the Arctic. We want to watch to see if there's any shift at all in this pattern, because the cold air that was here, that's been in parts of the Canadian prairies, been let out down here into the southern plains and into the Midwest. If this shifts, it could bring some of that cold air temporarily to the Carolinas and increase our risk of frost. But we're going to talk about that in just a few seconds, because that pattern up to this point, speaking of precipitation, has done this. Where the trough is dug into Europe, it's been very wet. But look over here in the Russian wheat belt, extremely dry for the last 30 days. We're going to be talking about what's going on here over the next couple of weeks in Siberia with snow cover increasing, what that's going to mean for our winter pattern. With the MJO stuck over here in phase 4 and 5, that's why it's been so wet in Southeast Asia. And again, I'll bring you up to speed on what's going on in South America at the end of this video. But that pattern I just showed you gave us this map over the last 30 days in terms of precipitation. But look at the changes. Are you ready? This next animation does not show a big ridge here. It's now got troughing. And you can see the troughs we've been talking about. Let me play this forward for you. Okay, here we are Tuesday afternoon. There's our cutoff low. Okay, so the main flow's up here. There's the cutoff low. That thing right there is zeta. Now, as we move this forward, do you see how the cutoff low, the flow is going to come around the base of it just like this, is going to grab zeta and pull it to the north and maybe send it here into the mid-Atlantic, missing parts of the Carolinas. So what we've got here, it's just such a weak little signal, but there it is on the border between Mississippi and Alabama. The deeper trough behind it was flinging it farther to the north, and then that trough comes cutting through by the time we get into Friday and Saturday. Now, what am I talking about here? Well, notice as we get into next week, here's the little clipper system on Saturday that comes through Manitoba. And as it sweeps through Sunday into Monday, see it right there? That's what brings in our shot at some colder air this weekend and our chance at precipitation early next week. But after that, notice how we don't have a big ridge here anymore. And that's an entirely different pattern all the way out to day 10. Now let me put that together for you so that it makes some sense. Over the next week, this is what we're expecting in terms of precipitation. It's a combination of the cutoff low here and zeta coming in like this, where these two features come together and possibly leave us over in this area on the drier side of things. It will be absolutely critical this week, I'll just repeat myself, to see the interaction between zeta and the cutoff low to know if this forecast is going to verify. Now that same thing, by the way, is going to put down quite a bit of snow on its backside over here. Look at that snow that's going to be parts of the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles into Kansas and back into New Mexico and Colorado. And maybe on Friday, some snow here to our north. And just so you know where we've had snow so far this year, this at least just shows you the last 72 hours, very heavy snowfall in the high plains here of the United States. But notice by day 10, see where we have the trough in place? That is where we had ridging up to this point. And all I'm going to tell you is watch Greenland, watch Alaska. Because at this point, the trough south of Alaska, the trough south of Greenland means a relaxed pattern for us. And that will put off, if we can get through this weekend without having one, that will put off the risk of frost. So let's talk about those things. One, this pattern is not a wet one for us. You can see here that the week 2 precipitation pattern from the GFS and from the European is overall a drier pattern. We still have to watch the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, and Western Atlantic for tropical development, but overall it's a drier pattern. 2, temperatures. Ready? This is minimum temperatures only, which is what we're concerned about. The color shading tells you the difference from normal. This goes from Monday into Tuesday, which is going to be bitterly cold here in this part of the country. Overnight lows of 2 degrees. Now look here. We are on the upswing side of this trough, and therefore we're going to have overnight lows that are several degrees warmer than average here in the mid-50s. As we go from Tuesday into Wednesday, Thursday, and even into Friday, we still hang on to that. But remember, it was after this, Saturday, that I'm going to start to see some of that colder air come in. Now the question is, do we get some patchy frost in here, or is it up in the Appalachian Mountains? At this point, going from Saturday into Sunday, while we do see some overnight lows in the high 30s, low 40s in this area right in through here, I don't yet see a frost threat. The long-range European says for Saturday morning, if there's a frost threat, it is going to be contained here in the mountains at higher elevation. But we could be seeing some of those mid-30s in this particular area. Let's watch out for it early this weekend. But you see, beyond that, as the cooler air comes sweeping through in day 5 through 10, see it here? This warmer air on the backside in both models replaces it. So in the day 10 through 15, we actually see normal temperatures for the most part in the European and even warmer than normal in the GFS, which is a bit more progressive. Now let's take that out even farther. Over there on the right, I have the week 3 and the week 4 temperature patterns. This is November 9th through the 15th and the 15th through the 22nd. You continue to see that the models are relaxing the pattern for much of North America, keeping it on the warmer side of things. And it's going to be tricky, trying to figure out what's going to happen with precipitation. The week 3 pattern wants to bring in a bit more moisture here, but the question is, why is it doing that? And I cannot give you a firm explanation on it. The model isn't really revealing its cards as to why it's got that heavier precip in that area. I'm just going to have to watch very carefully what's going on in the tropics to let you know if something should be coming out of the Western Atlantic at that time period in November. If any year is going to do it, 2020 is going to be the year. So now let's move to South America, do a long-range recap, and we'll be done. Remember, with the MJ over here in phase 3, 4, 5, and 6, the best upper level support over the last month has really been in that area, suppressing the vertical motion here. Now for South America, look at what happens in phases 4, 5, and 6. It's dry in Brazil. But remember, the MJO is coming out of 6 into 7, 8, and 1. Good upper level support over here. And as a consequence, look at this, 8, 1, 2, those are phases that are wet. So we see that over the next week, very wet conditions, meaning a much more aggressive planting pace here for soybeans in this area. That's going to be critical for corn and cotton as well. But as we get out into week 2, look at how dry it gets south of that line I just drew here into southern Brazil and even into Argentina. So the pattern is setting things up in South America to kind of come on in fits and spurts overall here with the establishment of the monsoon. And this is giving Brazil a shaky start to its growing season and something we want to watch very carefully. Okay, to finish this up, I want to give you a recap of our long-range winter forecast, which we covered in the webinar. Remember, La Nina right now is probably our most dominant signal for the rest of this upcoming winter. And it will regain its strength and continue to sit in this area and probably reach a peak mid-December. Now, I went out and I looked at all of the ocean temperature patterns in the Central Pacific from 1990 to present. And this would be January to December. Now, any years where La Nina developed, these squiggly lines went down. Any years where El Nino developed, the squiggly lines go up. And they're just measuring the ocean temperatures in the Central Pacific. Well, look at this. I identified these years right here as years that behaved during winter very similar to what 2020 has given us, which is that black dashed line. What I'm doing for you is I'm putting together an analog forecast based only off of La Nina. And here's what you get. You see, during those years, let's talk about temperatures over here on the right. It was cold through Alaska and then cold through the Canadian prairies. We were warm in the southwest all the way over here to the east coast. Why? The jet stream was doing this. It stayed north. Therefore, we were warm, had a warmer winter overall. Now, that's averaging 4 months, December through March, when looking at these particular years. This upcoming seasonal forecast, let's just review this again, is suggesting that same thing. You can see that the jet stream pattern is likely going to do something a bit like this, and therefore this region will probably stay on the drier side of things and possibly on the warmer side of things, with the coldest air coming out at times like this. Now, this doesn't mean we can't have a time period where the North Atlantic Oscillation goes negative, or the Arctic Oscillation, aka the polar vortex, goes negative, and we get a big shot at colder air. But what I'm seeing at this point is a warmer time period. I'm going to put in one important caveat here, and I hope you're still tuned in, because right now Arctic sea ice extent here is at a record low. Now, last time this happened was winter 2012-13, and that was a super cold March. of 2013. I'm going to watch that carefully. I'll keep you posted all winter long. But just to keep you up to date on this, the National Multi-Model Ensemble also has drier in through here and a warmer pattern. So outside of any collapses in the polar vortex or the North Atlantic Oscillation going negative, we will likely see, because of La Nina, a milder pattern through winter. The precipitation is going to be hard to nail down, to be honest with you. But at this point, this is what the models are suggesting. So we'll just come back to this. And this is what I shared at the webinar. This is from NOAA. They released this back a week and a half ago. This is their outlook for temperatures on the left and precipitation on the right. And you can pause the video and take a closer look here. But just like I did, their winter forecast is dominated by La Nina. There are other factors to consider. We'll keep a close eye on them and report back to you every week. I appreciate your extra attention today as we went over this long-range forecast again. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you again next Monday. Thanks.